हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Dandavat Pranams. Thank you all for joining in for the study session today. Today we're going to study teachings of Lord Chaitanya. First we'll start with the prayers. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Sahitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahamadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Dushe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Namaste Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shabanu Sudhe Devi Panchakalpitubhyascha Kripaya Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripatamham Vande Shri Gurun Dinadarinam Paramanandamadavam Shri Krishna Chaitanyameshwaram Harihi Om Tatsat Ajanulambita Bhujau Kanakavadathau Sankirtanaikapitaro Kamalayatakshav Vishwambarau Dvijabarau Yugadharmapalo Vande Jagatpriyakarau Karunavataro Vande Guruni Shabhaktani Shammishavatarakant Tatprakasham Satachakte Krishna Chaitanya Samyakam Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sahodito Gaurode Pushpavantau Chitro Shando Tamonudau Yadadvaitam Brahma Upanishadi Tadapyasya Tano Bhayatmantaryami Purusha Iti Soshamsha Vibhavaha Shadaishwaryai Purno Se Bhagavan Sa Swayam Hayam Na Chaitanya Krishna Jagadi Paradhatvam Paramiha Anarpita Charinchirat Karunayavatirna Kalau Samarpaitu Jolarasam Sukti Shriyam Harihi Purada Sundara Dudikatam Vasandipitaha Sadarde Kandare Sratuvaha Shachinandanaha Radha Krishna Pranev Kritirladini Shaktirasmat Ekatmanam Abhibhuvi Puradeha Vedam Gatauto Chaitanyakyam Pranamaduna Tadvayam Chaikyamaptam Radha Bhavaduti Sulitam Naumi Krishna Swarupam Shri Radhaya Pranay Mahima Kidrisho Vanayaiva Swadhyo Yena Adbhutamagriма Kidrisho Va Madiyaha Saukyam Chasya Madanavavataha Kidrisham Veti Lobhat Tadbhavadeha Samatani Shachigarbha Sindhu Harinduho Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranams to all the devotees. Let us quickly start with our teachings of Lord Chaitanya. We are on chapter number 20. So we're going to quickly, we've been reading about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, actually with Prakashananda Saraswati, one of the Mayavadi sannyasis, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is winning him over, not only by logic, in fact, not at all by logic, but actually by his humility, right? There are several people whom Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted into Vaishnavism, right? Our Gopala Bhatta Goswami's father, Venkatavatta, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed for 4 months during the South India Yatra, where the Chaturmas period, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed in Venkatavatta's house, they were Sri Vaishnavas, right? But they were converted in the sense they became pure devotees of the Lord. They were worshippers of Lakshmi Narayan, and their son Gopala Bhatta Goswami became one of the Goswamis of Vrindavan, right? So in this way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted many Mayavadi sannyasis into pure devotees. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was an impersonalist. He was converted into pure Vaishnava. And similarly here, Prakashananda Saraswati is a Mayavadi sannyasi, and we see how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is converting him into a pure Vaishnava. And yad yad acharati shreshtas tat tat evetro jana. Whatever leader does, common people follow. So similarly, when Prakashananda Saraswati, who was the leader of the Mayavadi sannyasis, he became a devotee, he became a Vaishnava, then all of the sannyasis were following him. They were also getting converted. So that is what we're going to study here. What is the goal of Vedanta? When Prakashananda Saraswati asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you're a sannyasi, you should be studying Veda Anta, the conclusion of the Vedas. Why are you singing and dancing like a madman? Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, my spiritual master told that I am a fool. I have to simply perform the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And that will lead me to the ultimate goal of Krishna Prema. Krishna himself tells in Bhagavad Gita 15.15, what does he say? Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matha smrite jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarvairahameva vedyo vedanta krid veda videva chaham. So Krishna is saying, Vedanta, I am only the Anta of Veda. That means you have to know me. If you want to study, complete the study of Vedas, Vedanta Krit, Veda Vid, Eva Chaham. I am the compiler of the Vedas. I am the knower of the Vedas. And by the Vedas, I am to be known. This is what Krishna is also saying. So let's see what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying here about the goal of the Vedanta study. Right? From Bhagavad Gita, we understand that the goal of the Vedanta study is to understand Lord Sri Krishna. Okay, on this note, let's quickly go ahead. Devotees can raise your hands and we can start reading. Okay, Karpagavalli Mataji's hand is up. Yes, go ahead, Mataji. The goal of Vedanta study.
Thank you, Mataji.
Dandavats, Mataji. Yes, go ahead.
Am I audible, Mataji?
Yes.
Chapter 21, goal of Vedanta study. It is concluded that Lord Krishna or Vishnu is not of this material world, and he belongs to the spiritual world. One who considers him to be a demigod of the material world is a great offender and blasphemer. Lord Vishnu is not subject to perception by material senses, nor can he be realized by mental speculation. Unlike in the material world, where there is always a difference between the body and the soul, there is no difference between the body and the soul of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Material things are enjoyed by living entities because the living entities are superior in quality, whereas material nature is inferior. Thus, the superior nature of the living entities can enjoy the inferior nature matter. Because Lord Vishnu is in no way touched by matter, he has no tendency to enjoy material nature by the way the living entities do. The living entities cannot attain knowledge of Vishnu by enjoying their habits and mental speculation. The infinitesimal living entities are not the enjoyers of Vishnu, but they are enjoyed by Vishnu. Only the greatest offender thinks that Vishnu is enjoyed. The greatest blasphemy is to consider Vishnu and the living entity on the same level. The Supreme Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, is compared to a blazing fire, and the innumerable living entities are compared to sparks emanating from that fire. Although both the Supreme Lord and the living entities are qualitatively fire, there is yet a distinction. Vishnu, the Supreme, is infinite, whereas the living entities which are about but sparks are infinitesimal. Infinitesimal. The infinitesimal living entities are emanations from the original infinite spirit. In their constitutional position as infinitesimal spirits, there is no trace of matter. The living entities are not as great as Narayana, Vishnu, who is beyond this material creation. Even Sankaracharya accepts Narayana to be beyond the material creation. Since neither Vishnu nor the living entity are of the material creation, someone may inquire, why were these small particles of spirit created at all? The answer is that the supreme absolute truth is complete in his perfection when he is both infinite and infinitesimal. But if he was simply infinite but not infinitesimal, he would not be perfect. The infinite portion is Lord Vishnu Tattva and the Supreme Personal or the Supreme Personal Godhead, and the infinitesimal portion is the living entity. Due to the infinite size of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual world exists, and due to the infinitesimal size of the living entity, the material world exists. When the infinitesimal living entities are engaged in trying to fulfill their infinitesimal desires for material enjoyment, they are called Diva Sakti. But when they are dovetailed with the infinite, they are called liberated soul. There is no need to ask, therefore, why God created the infinitesimal portions. They are simply the complementary side of the Supreme. It is doubtlessly essential for the infinite to have infinitesimal portions which are inseparable parts and parcels of the Supreme Soul. Because the living entities are infinitesimal parts of the parts and parcels of the Supreme, there is a reciprocation of feelings between the infinite and the infinitesimal. Had there been no infinitesimal living entities, the Supreme Lord would have been inactive and there would not be variegatedness in spiritual life. There would be no meaning to a king if there is no subjects, and there would be no meaning to the Supreme Lord if there were no infinitesimal living entities. How can there be meaning to the word Lord if there is no one to rule? The conclusion is that the living entities are expansions of the energy of the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the energetic. Shall
Hare
I
Krishna.
continue?
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Yeah, it's very wonderful. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is making very, very wonderful points. 3 or 4 very important points that we read in the last 3-4 paragraphs. One is Achintya Abheda Beda Tattva. What is Achintya Abheda Beda Tattva? That means we are equal to the Lord in quality, whereas we are not equal to the Lord in quantity. That is what is explained by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Achintya Abheda Beda. It's Achintya. How can we understand that something is equal and something is not equal also? Prabhupada gives very many examples actually. Prabhupada gives example of, a fire and a spark, right? Which is also quoted here, right? A fire and spark, while the spark of fire is qualitatively equal to the fire, it is not equal, it is same as fire in terms of quality, but in terms of quantity, it is infinitesimal. Whereas a fire can burn, the entire house or the entire area. A spark of fire cannot cause any damage, right? Similarly, Prabhupada gives example of a drop of water and the ocean. The drop of water has got the same salt, same chemical composition as that of the ocean. However, while the ocean can actually flood the entire region, a drop of water does not have the potential, does not have that much of power. So similarly, the living entities, although are equal to the Lord in terms of Satchit Ananda, we are also eternal, we are also knowledgeable, we are also blissful. But our extent of knowledge, our extent of eternity, and our extent of bliss are infinitesimal as compared to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in that way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains the Jiva Tattva, the Jiva Tattva and the Parabrahma. Jiva Tattva refers to the Brahman. The term Brahman, it may refer sometimes to the living entity and sometimes to the Lord. But the term Jiva Tattva, it only refers to the living entities, right? Jiva Tattva refers to the living entities, and Parabrahman only refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is one thing. Second thing, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also talking about what Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita. Purushaha prakritasto hi bhungte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangasya sad asad yoni janmasho. Right? So what is this Purusha doing? Right? Purusha is the living entity. We are controllers. We are mini controllers, right? So what do we control? We try to control Prakriti. We try to enjoy Prakriti. We try to exploit Prakriti, right? Which is said to be the inferior nature. Bhungte Prakriti Jan Gunan. Bhungte means to enjoy. Karanam, why are we doing it? Karanam Guna Sangasya. Because we are getting entangled by the three modes of material nature. Sat, Asat, Yoni, Janmashu. So, sometimes born as a human being, sometimes as an ant, sometimes as a plant or as a tree or as a, sometimes as a Gandharva, sometimes as a sage or a saint or even an animal, etc. Right? We go and we go to various levels, or we get born, we take various forms of the living entities. Jalaja Navalakshani, Stavara Laksha Vimshati. Right? So, different 8.4 million species, we keep rotating around in the 8.4 million species according to our consciousness, according to what we are trying to enjoy. Right? And Karanam Guna Sangasya, whichever mode we are associated with, according to that we will take our next birth, right? And every time we take jiva, that means every time we take a body, we try to exploit the material nature according to the modes that we have acquired, according to our previous desires, according to our previous actions. Prakrita Purushaha Prakritastuhi. So Purushaha, the living entity, what does he do? He tries to exploit the material nature, whereas the Lord, he never tries to enjoy the material nature. Why? Because the Lord is the Lord is the creator of the earth, so he is the creator, right? And he enjoys the transcendental spiritual world. He does not enjoy the material things, right? So, Mamevamsho Jivaloke Jivabhuta Sanatanaha Manasasthani Indriyani Prakriti Sthani Karshati. Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, right? Mamaiva Amsho Jivaloke. The living entities are the parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the living entities have to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whereas the living entities are the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord, Krishna is the energetic, and various energies he has, like the Antaranga Shakti, the Bahiranga Shakti, the Tatastha Shakti, which is the living entities. So we have to ensure that we stay in our constitutional position and serve the energetic, so that we can be in our constitutional position, we can be happy. Otherwise, if we try to simply enjoy or exploit the material nature, then what happens? We will be eternally frustrated. So that is what is given here in the first three paragraphs. Okay, now let's move ahead. Who will read now next? Okay, Vrishabhanu Kanya Mataji, go ahead. In all Vedic literatures, including the Bhagavad Gita.
Hare Krishna, Dandvat Pranam Mataji. In all Vedic literature, including the Bhagavad Gita and Vishnu Purana, much evidence is given to distinguish between the energy and the energetic. In the Bhagavad Gita 1.4, 7.4, it is clearly stated that earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the five gross elements of the material world, the mind, intelligence, and false ego, the three subtle elements, are the Lord's energies. All material nature is divided into these 8 elements, which together comprise his inferior nature or energy. Another name for this inferior nature is Maya or illusion. Beyond these 8 inferior elements is his superior energy, which is called the Para Prakriti. This Para Prakriti comprises the living entities who are found in great numbers throughout the material world. The purport is that the Supreme Lord is the absolute truth, the energetic, and that as such he has energies. When one of the energies is not properly manifested, or when it is covered by some shadow, it is called Maya Sakti. The material cosmic manifestation is a product of that Maya Sakti. And the living entities beyond this covered inferior energy, they have their pure spiritual existence, their pure identity, and their pure mental activities, all beyond the manifestation of this material cosmos. Although the living entities' mind, intelligence, and identity are beyond the range of this material world, when he enters into the material world due to his desire to lord it over matter. His original mind, intelligence, and body become covered by the material energy. When he is again free of the covering of this material inferior energy, he is called liberated. When he is liberated, he has no false ego, but his real ego again comes into existence. Foolish mental speculators think that after liberation, one's identity is lost, but that is not so, because the living entity is eternally part and parcel of God. When he is liberated, he revives his original, eternal part and parcel identity. And the realization of Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit, not the body, does not mean that the living entity loses its identity. At the present moment, a person may consider himself to be matter, but in his liberated state, he will understand that he is not matter, but spirit soul, part of the infinite, to become Krishna conscious or spiritual conscious, and to engage in the transcendental loving service of Krishna are sign of the liberated stage. In the Vishnu Puran 6.7.61, it is clearly stated, Vishnu Shakti Paraprokta Kshetra Jan
Avidya karma samyanya tritiya shaktirishate.
Yes, Hare Krishna. The energy of the Supreme Lord is divided into three Parakshetra Jana and Avaidya. The para energy is actually the energy of the Supreme Lord Himself. The Kshetra Jana energy is the living entity, and the Avaidya energy is the material world or Maya. It is called Avidya or ignorance, because under the spell of this material energy, one forgets his actual position and his relationship with the Supreme Lord. The conclusion is that the living entities represent one of the energies of the Supreme Lord. As infinitesimal parts and parcels of the Supreme, they are called jivas. It is if the jivas are artificially placed on the same level with the infinite supreme, because both of them are Brahmana or spirit, then bewilderment will certainly be the result. Generally, Mayavadi philosophers are perplexed before learned Vaishnavas learned Vaishnava, because the Mayavadis cannot explain the cause of bondage of the living entities. They simply say it is due to the ignorance, but they cannot explain how the living entities can be covered by ignorance if they are supreme. And the actual reason is that the living entities, although qualitatively one with the supreme, are infinitesimal, not infinite. Had they been infinite, there would have been no possibility of their being covered by ignorance, because the living entity is
Infinitesimal.
infinitesimal. He can be covered by an infinite energy. The foolishness and ignorance of the Mayavadis are revealed when they try to explain how the infinite can be covered by ignorance. It is offensive to attempt to qualify the infinite by arguing that he is subject to the spell of ignorance. Although,
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare
Very good.
Krishna, Mataji. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. So Mayavadis means Mayavadis, aparadis, right? Like that. So why are they aparadis? Because when Mayavadis, they think that when Krishna incarnates in this material world to attract the jivas back home, back to Godhead, to give a glimpse of the Goloka Vrindavan Dham Leelas, that time the Mayavadis, they think that now Krishna is also subject to illusion, right? But then they know that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. So they think that I'm also now subject to illusion. That's why I'm born in this world. But later on, when I perfect my life, right, where we perform Vishtanga Yoga, we perform Bhakti Yoga, we perform Jnana Yoga, we perform Karma Yoga. And in this way, when we purify ourselves and all the lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, illusion, all that goes away, then what happens? Then I will become Bhagavan. That is misconception of Mayavadis. That's why Prabhupada says Mayavadism is the last snare of Maya. Until such time you want to enjoy senses, you want to exploit the material nature. But then at some point in time, we take up the path of spiritual practices. We take up the process of chanting the holy names. We perform the Ashtanga yoga process, etc. But then, if one is not guided under a bona fide Guru Parampara, then what happens? One gets bewildered. Because one will get siddhis, right? One will get siddhis, one will be able to focus, concentrate, right? Even in the early stage of practice of all of these things, right? Pranayama, yama, niyama, when one follows what should not be done, what should be done, yama, niyama, pranayama, right? When one performs all these activities, what happens? One's mind becomes calm, one's mind calms down, one is able to focus, one is able to concentrate, right? Some people who are in yogas are able to also produce some powders, coins, etc. They perform some magical activities and all that. So when they do all of that, then they know that, oh, I'm becoming very powerful. Now I can do anything, whatever I want, right? And the false ego, ahankar, becomes too much, right? And then what do they think? Okay, now I'm becoming better and better. Now if I perfect my life more and more, what will happen? I will become God. So that is the last snare of Maya, right? When one gives up everything, but then one at last thinks that I'm going to now become God. I'm going to merge with the effulgence, right? If I'm going to become God, that impersonal Brahman at least is better, right? If at all such a person comes in the association of a devotee, such person may become a bhakta. Like we have the Sanat Kumaras, we have the Shukadev Goswami, who heard the glories of the Lord and became a pure devotee of the Lord from being an impersonalist. But Mayavadis will very, very difficult. See, in this case, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself delivered Prakashananda Saraswati, who is a Mayavadi. So it takes a very, very pure devotee to actually convert, because such pure devotees are Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani. These people are walking pilgrimages, right? See, we get a benefit when we go to Vrindavan Dham, when we take bath in the Ganges, when we take bath in the Yamuna, right? When we go to the places where the Lord has performed pastimes, we'll get purified. But what are these pure devotees of the Lord? They are tirthas. They are moving tirthas. When someone gets their association, somebody offers obeisances. What happens there? All the unnecessary things in the heart, they get vanquished, they get reduced, they get destroyed, to the extent one is sincerely and faithfully serving and inquiring from such a bona fide spiritual master. So a Mayavadi is very, very difficult to get converted to become bhaktas, because they want to become God, and the Lord will definitely cover himself by the Yoga Maya potency, right? Who can understand the Lord? The Lord can only be understood by pure devotees. To all the others, Krishna covers himself, right? So, moreover, when they think that, they and the Lord are the same, and then they offend the Lord, or they consider the Lord to be equal to demigods, in all such cases, when offenses are committed, then what happens? So much the bewilderment becomes more and more, right? The more we want to enjoy becoming the Lord. Like the three words that is used in this particular verse: Para, Kshetrajna, and Avidya. Para means, of course, the Para Prakriti. Para Prakriti means what is beyond the material world, the three-fourth creation, which is the transcendental world. Kshetrajna, this is a term that is used in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Kshetra means his body. Kshetrajna means one who has the knowledge of this body. It refers to the living entity. And Avidya completely refers to the material nature, which we try to enjoy as minute controllers. We try to enjoy the material nature. So all of these three things, one has to have proper knowledge. Who is Para, who is Kshetrajna, and what is Avidya. And the Jiva is supposed to understand these three things. Serve the Para, serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Understand who is the Kshetrajna. I know only my body. Whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead knows every other body. Why? Is because he's present as Paramatma in everyone. And in that, when one gets this knowledge, then one transcends what is known as avidya or ignorance. Right? So the more one associates with a Mayavadi, the more one's ignorance or one's avidya will increase. The more one's avidya increases, the more difficult it becomes for us to even practice devotional service. But the more we associate with the bona fide devotee of the Lord, to that extent our avidya will come down, and in this way we'll be able to engage more in devotional service, and then we'll be able to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing the Lord to be infinite and ourselves to be infinitesimal. That means infinite means what cannot be measured. Infinitesimal means the soul. What is the size of the soul? 1/10,000th tip of a hair, right? We know one hair. One hair is how long it is, right? 1/10,000th tip of that hair. That is the size of the individual soul. And we think we are so infinitesimal. We think we are infinite, and that is where the understanding is a problem, and that is where ignorance comes in, and that is where we get bewildered. The more the bewilderment, we will become Mayavadis, right? That's why it's very important to take proper association. Otherwise, it is very difficult to unlearn and relearn, right? Most of the South Indians, they get so influenced by the Mayavadis in the early stage. They don't know. They very religiously read Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, etc. And then they get association of Mayavadis, and then in that what happens? They are studying the scriptures. They are doing very so-called religious activities, but then they will not get the desired success. That's why very important that we should get proper association of somebody who's coming in the one of the four bona fide Guru Paramparas. Then we will get real knowledge, and then avidya will be vanquished. Okay, Rajneesh Prabhu, please go ahead. Although Shankara attempted from there.
Hare Krishna Mataji Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Although Shankara attempted to cover the Supreme Lord by his Mayavada philosophy, he was simply following the order of the Lord. It should be understood that his teachings were a timely necessity, but not a permanent fact. In the Vedanta Sutra, the distinction between energy and energetic is accepted from the very beginning. Second aphorism of Vedanta Sutra, Janmadi Asya Yatha really states that supreme absolute truth is the source of all the emanations. Thus, the emanations are the energy of the Supreme, whereas Supreme himself is energetic. Shankara has falsely argued that if the transformation of energy is accepted, Supreme absolute truth cannot remain immutable. But this is not true. Despite the fact the unlimited energies are always being generated, the supreme absolute truth remains always the same. He is not affected by the emanation of unlimited energies. Shankaracharya has therefore incorrectly established his theory of illusion. Ramanujacharya has discussed this point very nicely. One may argue since there was only one absolute truth before the creation of this material world, how is it possible that the living entities emanated from him? If he were alone, how could he have produced it or generated the infinitesimal living entities? In answer to this question, the Vedas state that everything is generated from the absolute truth, everything is maintained by the absolute truth, and after annihilation, everything enters into the absolute truth. This statement from Upanishads make it clear that when the living entities are liberated, they enter into the supreme existence without changing their original constitution. We must always remember that the Supreme Lord has his creative function, and that the infinitesimal living entities have their creative functions also. It is not that their creative function is lost when they are liberated or enter into the supreme after the dissolution of the material body. On the contrary, the creative function of the living entity is properly manifested in the liberated state. If the living entity's activities are manifest even when he is materially conditioned, then how is it possible for his activities to stop when he attains liberation? Living entities entering the state of liberation may be compared to a bird entering a tree, or an animal entering the forest, or a plane entering the sky. In no case are activities stopped.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So very beautifully, this analogy is given also in Bhagavad Gita, and one of the purports. Prabhupada gives this analogy, wherein Prabhupada says a green bird enters a green tree, right? And there are actually two birds sitting there. One is the soul, and the other is the super soul, right? The one of the green birds, which is the soul, is actually trying to take all the seeds, trying to eat, trying to seeing where it can find its food, very busy and very active. And the other bird, which is a super soul, is constantly looking at this bird. There is a very beautiful picture also that's given in Bhagavad Gita, right? So in this way, the soul and the super soul are always there in the tree of the material body. There is a jiva, and then there is the the jiva is the soul, and then there is a Parabrahman, then there is a Supreme Personality of Godhead also situated as a Paramatma. But both of them have their own functions, right? What is the function of the super soul? What is that verse? Hare, supervisory function. Okay, just 1 second. What is that verse? Yeah, 13.23. Isn't it? Yeah. Upadranumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwaraha paramatmeti chapyukto dehesmin purushaha paraha. That means within this body, the Supreme Lord is there. So what is the function of the Supreme Lord? He's simply the witness, and he's a permitter, and he is the transcendental enjoyer, he is the ultimate controller, and he is the Paramatma. Upadrashta means one who is just witnessing. Upadrashta, drishti, somebody who's just seeing but not doing anything. Anumanta, that means one who is permitter. Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwaraha. Bharta means the husband, the enjoyer, right? Bhokta means the enjoyer, the controller, and Maheshwaraha, that means ultimate controller. So this is the function of the Paramatma, and the Paramatma chooses not to do any activity. And what is the position of the living entity? The living entity is doing one thing after another, trying to find happiness one way or the other, right? So in this way, both of them have their specific activities. Both of them are there in the same tree. Just because a green bird enters a green tree, it does not merge and everything does not become one, which is the Mayavadi idea that everything becomes one. Then nobody has their own identity. No, very clearly it is mentioned the body also has its identity, right? We know that we are not this body, but this body is not false. When somebody pinches me, Prabhupada gives an example. Somebody pinches me, I feel the pain. So this is not false, but this is an illusion, right? This pain is because I'm attaching myself to this body, right? When I become transcendental, then when I get a spiritual body, then I will not have this material body. But that is not my position right now. Right now, I am under the influence of three modes of material nature. I have a material body, but I am not this material body. But this body is not false. This body is true. I am able to experience pain and suffering of this because of this material body, right? So we need to understand that each has its own creative function. Of course, the body is destructible. The body dies, but the soul is indestructible. The soul is eternal. The super soul is also eternal. But the different functions are there, and they all maintain their identities. It is never that the soul and the super soul get merged, and in this way they become one and the same. So that is a misconception. That is what is given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here. The living entity and the Lord are compared to two birds, right? And both of them have their own activities, and none of their activities can be stopped. Either we perform activities in our constitutional position as Jivara Swarupe Krishna and Nityadas, or we perform our activities according to our material consciousness. Purusha Prakriti Stoki, Bhumte Prakriti Janguna. Right? We try to exploit the material nature, or we try to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or we serve the Antaranga Shakti of the Lord. So in either case, the living entity is always engaged in activities. That is one thing, that a living entity is always engaged in activities. It is not, it is never inactive. The living entity can never be inactive like that. Okay, let's move forward. Let me share my screen. Yeah, when explaining the second aphorism, okay, who will read now? Leela Nandini Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Mataji,
Hare Krishna Mataji,
when explaining the second aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra, Shankara has most unceremoniously tried to explain that Brahman, or the absolute, supreme absolute truth is impersonal. He has also cunningly tried to switch the doctrine of byproducts into the doctrine of change. For the supreme absolute truth, there is no change. It is simply that a byproduct results from his inconceivable powers of action. In other words, a relative truth, a byproduct, is produced out of the supreme truth. For example, when a chair is produced out of crude wood, it is said that a byproduct is produced. The supreme absolute truth, Brahman, is immutable, and when we find a byproduct, the living entity or this cosmic manifestation, it is transformation of the supreme energies or a byproduct of the supreme. It is like milk being transformed into yogurt. In this way, if we study the living entities in the cosmic manifestation, it will appear that they are not different from the original absolute truth. But from the Vedic literature, we understand that the absolute truth has varieties of energy, and the living entities and the cosmic manifestation are but a demonstration of his energies. The energies are not separate from the energetic, therefore, the living entity and cosmic manifestation are inseparable truths, part of the absolute truth. Such a conclusion regarding the absolute truth and the relative truth should be acceptable to any sane person. The supreme absolute truth has its inconceivable potency out of which the cosmic manifestation has been produced. In other words, the supreme absolute truth supplies the ingredients, and the living entity and the cosmic manifestation are the byproducts. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, it is clearly stated, Edo va imani bhudani jayande. This absolute truth is the original reservoir of all ingredients, and this material world and its living entities are produced from those ingredients. Less intelligent persons who cannot understand this doctrine of byproducts cannot grasp how the cosmic manifestation and the living entity are simultaneously one with and different from the absolute truth. Not understanding this, one concludes that the doctrine of byproducts implies that the absolute truth itself is transformed. Unnecessarily fearing this, one then concludes that this cosmic manifestation and the living entity are false. Shankaracharya gives the example of a rope being mistaken for a snake, and sometimes the example of mistaking an oyster shell for gold is cited. But surely such arguments are ways of cheating. As mentioned in the Mundakya Upanishad, the examples of mistaking a rope for the snake and an oyster shell for gold have their proper applications and can be understood as follows. The living entity in its original constitution position is pure spirit. When a human being identifies himself with the material body, his misidentification is like mistaking a rope for a snake and or an oyster shell for gold. The doctrine of illusionary transformation of state is accepted when one thing is mistaken for another. Actually, the body is not the living entity, but according to the doctrine of illusory transformation of state, one accepts the body as the living entity. Every conditioned soul is undoubtedly contaminated by this doctrine of illusory transformation of state. The conditioned state of living entity is diseased condition. Originally, the living entity and the original cause of this manifestation exist outside the state of transformation, but mistaken thoughts and arguments can overcome a person when he forgets the inconceivable energies of the Supreme Lord. Even in the material world, there are many examples of inconceivable energy. The sun has been producing unlimited energy from time immemorial, and so many byproducts results from the sun. Yet there is no change in the heat and temperature of the sun itself. If the sun, despite being a material product, can maintain its original temperature and produce so many byproducts, is it difficult to understand that the supreme absolute truth remains unchanged in spite of producing so many byproducts by its inconceivable energy? Thus, there is no question of transformation as far as the absolute truth, supreme absolute truth is concerned. In Vedic literatures, there is information. Hare Krishna Mataji, Hari Bol. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Okay. Thank you, Mataji. So,
Thank
Om
you.
Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudarchate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vasishyate. So, the Ishopanishad, the first verse, it is talking about how the Supreme Lord is Purnam, he is complete. And Om Purnamadaha, Purnat, Purnamudarchate. That means the absolute source of everything is the Supreme Lord who is Purna, who is complete. All the emanations from him, they are also complete, and each emanation in its own, like for example, Brahmande Brahmi, there are several material universes. Each material universe is complete in itself, right? So the Lord does not undergo transformation just because his energies are used in creating some byproducts. What are the byproducts? The Lord has created these various chemicals, right? What is that? Bhumira, Ponalo, Vayu, Kam, Mano, Buddhi, Revacha. Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Right? These are the gross elements. And then we have the subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and false ego. And that comprises our body, isn't it? Our body is made up of earth, water, fire, and ether. The resources that are provided by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then our mind, our intelligence, and our false ego, they are also provided by the Lord. Simply by the glance of the Lord, through Lord Shiva, right? Lord Shiva, the glance is Lord Shiva, and what is created is the Prakriti, right? Who's in charge? The Prakriti is the in charge for Prakriti is Durga Devi, who's a consort of Lord Shiva. So in this way, Lord Vishnu has arranged everything to be created, this Prakriti, to be created, and it's up and running, and all the jivas are created, and the energy in the jiva is produced by the by the Jiva Shakti that is actually comes from Garbhoda Kshaya Vishnu. And everywhere, when annihilation takes place, everyone goes into the body of Garbhoda Kshaya Vishnu. And then, according to the desires, right, the body is created using the Bhumi, Rapo, Nalo, Vayu. So what is that? Bhumi, no, what is that? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Isn't it? So the body is created, and then the Jiva Shakti is again comes from Garbhoda Kshaya Vishnu. And then we get our bodies according to certain combinations, according to our previous desires. So in this way, everything is done by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But then the Supreme Lord does not undergo any change. Right? Of course, Krishna is there in Goloka Vrindavan. But even the three Vishnu forms, the Purusha Tattvas, who are in charge of this material creation, the original creation, Brahma is doing the secondary creation. The original creation is done by the Karmada Kshaya Vishnu. Universes are created from his pores. And then Garbhoda Kshaya Vishnu. From his each of the material universes, he manifests himself as Garbhoda Kshaya Vishnu. From his navel, Brahma is created. Brahma does a secondary creation. And then in each of our hearts, he expands as the Shiroda Kshaya Vishnu. Although so many expansions is taking place, the Lord is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who's not affected by his expansions. Right? So, an example Prabhupada gives, even in this material world, of course, in this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself is giving the example of a sun, right? The sun is a material object, right? The sun is providing so much of light and so much of energy. If you're not able to see anything without the presence of the sun is, clearing off all the, the urine and the contamination and, the accumulation of rainwater, dirty water, etc. So much of energy of the sun is consumed by doing all of this. But the sun is not affected. It is just an infinitesimal part of the energy of the sun that is required to maintain this entire universe. The power of the sun is unfathomable. And if this is true for, the Surya Dev, who is in charge of the sun planet, how much more the potential of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? So the Lord is not affected just because his energies are creating various forms of material universes, the jivas, the prakriti, the material nature, etc. Whatever are the transformations of the Lord's energy, but the Lord remains Purnam, the Lord remains complete to that extent that each of his creation also complete. That is the potential of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All right, fine, let's go ahead. In Vedic literature also, Leelanandini Mataji already read. Sudha Mataji, go ahead, and then Deval Mataji can read, and we'll complete this chapter today. Yes,
Hare
go ahead.
Mataji, Pranam.
Pranam Mataji.
In Vedic literatures, there is information of a material object called a touchstone, which simply by touch can transform iron into gold. The touchstone can produce an unlimited quantity of gold and yet remain unchanged. Only in the state of ignorance can one accept the Mayavada conclusion that this cosmic manifestation and the living entities are false or illusory. No sane man would attempt to impose ignorance and illusion upon the Supreme Absolute Truth, who is absolute in everything. There is no possibility of change, ignorance, or illusion in him. The Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Absolute Truth, is transcendental, completely different from all material conceptions, and full of inconceivable potencies. The Shvetasvatara Upanishad confirms that the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead is full of inconceivable energies and that no one else possesses such energies. It is only by misunderstanding the inconceivable energies of the Supreme that one may conclude that the Supreme Absolute Truth is impersonal. Such a deluded conclusion is experienced by a living being when he is in an acute stage of disease. In Srimad Bhagavatam 3.33.3, there is a clear statement that the Supreme Atma, the Lord, has inconceivable and innumerable potencies. It is also stated in Brahma Samhita 5.5 that the Supreme Spirit has many variegated and inconceivable energies. Nor one should think that there is any possibility of ignorance existing in the absolute truth. Ignorance and knowledge are conceptions in this world of duality. But in the absolute, there cannot be any ignorance. It is simply foolishness. It is simply foolishness to consider that the absolute is covered by ignorance. If the absolute truth could be covered by ignorance, how could it be said to be absolute? Understanding the inconceivable energies of the absolute is the only solution to the question of duality. This is because duality arises from the inconceivable energies of the absolute. By his inconceivable energies, the supreme absolute truth can remain unchanged and yet produce this cosmic manifestation with all its living entities, just as a touchstone can produce unlimited quantities of gold and yet remain unchanged. Because the absolute truth has such inconceivable energies, the material quality of ignorance cannot pertain to him. The true variegatedness which exists in the absolute truth is a product of his inconceivable energies. Indeed, it can be safely concluded that this cosmic manifestation is but a byproduct of his inconceivable energies. Once we accept the inconceivable energies of the Supreme Lord, we will find that there is no duality at all. The expansion of the energies of the Supreme Lord is as true as the Supreme Lord himself. But despite all the variegated manifestations of the Supreme Lord's energy, there is no question of transformation for the Supreme Lord himself. Once again, the example of the touchstone can be cited. In spite of producing unlimited quantities of gold, the touchstone remains the same. We therefore hear some sages say that the Supreme is the ingredient cause of this cosmic manifestation. Also, the example of the rope and the snake is not irregular. When we accept a rope to be a snake, it is to be understood that we have experienced a snake previously. Otherwise, how can the rope be mistaken for a snake? Thus, the conception of a snake is not untrue or unreal in itself. It is a false identification that is untrue or unreal. When by mistake we consider the rope to be a snake, that is our ignorance. But the very idea of a snake is not in itself ignorance. Similarly, when we accept a mirage in the desert to be water, there is no question of water being a false concept. Water is a fact, but it is a mistake to think that there is a water in the desert. Thus, this
Hare Krishna.
cosmic.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mataji.
Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam. So very beautifully, Prabhupada also explains, about this mirage in the desert, right? There is water is also true, desert is also true, but to think that water is available in the desert, that is an illusion. That is a wrong understanding, which is the illusion. Similarly, happiness is there, right? Happiness is a fact, and our desiring to be happy is also genuine, because Anandamaya Abhyasat. We are all practicing. We are all trying to some or the other become happy, which is okay, which is completely acceptable, because that is the nature of the soul to be happy, and it is not wrong to seek happiness. But then, where do we seek happiness? That is an illusion. If we seek happiness in this material world, which is dukhalayam, we will never find happiness. We will always be in illusion. But when we try to find happiness in rendering devotional service to the Lord, we will definitely find happiness. So there is no it is a correct understanding that there is rope also, there is snake also. But if you mistake the rope to be a snake, then we are under illusion. But rope and snake are both existing. Similarly, happiness is existing, and our wanting to become happy is also justified, because we are Anandamaya Abhyasat. But trying to find happiness in this material world, just like trying to find water in the desert, that is an illusion, because we can never find water in the desert, nor can we find happiness in this material world. So it is not false, but it is our wrong understanding that is actually resulting because of our illusion. Because of our ignorance, we are under illusion. Okay, Deval Mataji will just complete the chapter today. Deval Mataji, unmute yourself. You there?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Mataji, Tanva Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Sorry, I'm muted. Thus, the cosmic manifestation is not false, as Shankaracharya maintains. Actually, there is nothing false here. It is because of ignorance that the Mayavadis say this world is false. The conclusion of the Vaishnava philosophy is that this cosmic manifestation is a byproduct of the inconceivable energies of the Supreme Lord. The principal word in the Vedas, pranava or omkara, is a sound representation of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, omkara should be considered the supreme sound. But Shankaracharya has falsely preached that the phrase Tat Tvam Asi is a supreme vibration. Omkara is the reservoir of all the energies of the Supreme Lord. Shankara is wrong in maintaining that Tat Tvam Asi is the supreme vibration of the Vedas. But Tat Tvam Asi is only a secondary vibration. Tat Tvam Asi suggests only a partial representation of the Vedas. In several verses of the Bhagavad Gita, 8.13, 9.17, 17.24, the Lord has given importance to Omkara. Similarly, Omkara is given the importance in Atharva Veda and the Mandukya Upanishad. In his Bhagavad Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami has given great importance to Omkara. Omkara is the most confidential sound representation of the Supreme Lord. The sound representation or name of the Supreme Lord is as good as the Supreme Lord himself. By vibrating such sounds as Omkara or Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, one can be delivered from the contamination of this material world. Because such vibrations of transcendental sound can deliver a conditioned soul, they are known as Taraka mantras. That the sound vibration of the Supreme Lord is identical with the Supreme Lord is confirmed in the Narada Pancharatra. Vyaktam hi Bhagavan eva saksha narayana swanipsayam ashtakshara swarupena mukheshu parivartate. When the transcendental sound is vibrated by a conditioned soul, the Supreme Lord is present on his tongue. In the Mandukya Upanishad, it is said that when Omkara is chanted, one attains perfect spiritual vision. In other words, in spiritual vision or the spiritual world, there is nothing but Omkara. Unfortunately, Shankara has abandoned this chief word, Omkara, and has whimsically accepted Tat Tvam Asi as a supreme vibration of the Vedas. By accepting such a secondary vibration and leaving aside the principal vibration, he has given up the direct interpretation of the scripture in favor of his own indirect interpretation. Sripada Shankaracharya has unceremoniously obscured the Krishna consciousness described in the Purusha Vedanta Sutra by manufacturing an indirect interpretation and abandoning the direct interpretation. Unless we take all the statements of the Vedanta Sutra as self-evident, there is no point in studying the Vedanta Sutra. Interpreting the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra according to one's own whim is the greatest disservice to the self-evident Vedas. As far as the Omkara Pranava is concerned, it is considered to be the sound incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As such, Omkara is eternal, unlimited, transcendental, supreme, and indestructible. He, Omkara, is the beginning, middle, and end, and he is beginningless as well. When one understands Omkara as such, he becomes immortal. One should thus know Omkara as a representation of the Supreme situated in everyone's heart. One who understands Omkara and Vishnu as being one and the same and all-pervading never laments in the material world, nor does he remain a Shudra. Although he, Omkara, has no material form, he is unlimitedly expanded and has unlimited form. By understanding Omkara, one can become free. Yeah, Hare Krishna Mataji, should I?
Okay. First, let's discuss this. I think we've read a lot. Okay, let's quickly see what. Yeah, Hare Krishna. Yeah, so let's just understand that Tat Tvam Asi and Omkara, right? Very beautifully, it is explained here. Tat Tvam Asi means I am that. That means what? I am the Supreme Lord, right? That is I am that. It refers to that I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? Which is in terms of the technical understanding of the term, the Sanskrit term, I am that means it can also refer to I am the servant of the Supreme Lord, right? But Shankaracharya gave a direct interpretation of that particular Sanskrit verse. Like Sanskrit, you can conclude it in any ways, right? When the proper context is given, then only we can understand the proper meaning. If we simply take the Sanskrit word and apply the meaning, then we may arrive at wrong conclusions. That's why so many people who are scholars of Sanskrit, they generally are not able to arrive at the absolute truth. That is why study of the Vedanta Sutra always has to be done under the bona fide, under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Otherwise, one can interpret according to whatever is one's scholarship abilities, and one need not necessarily arrive at the real truth, right? In so many places, even in Bhagavad Gita purports, right, Krishna himself says, I am Omkara, right? Out of all the transcendental vibrations, I am Om. Om means Harihi Om Tat Sat, That means Hari is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is the primary understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is the conclusion of all the Vedas, right? That Omkara is the representation of the Supreme Lord. Omkara situated in everyone's heart. And Prabhupada also says, every time he says Omkara, Prabhupada automatically also in the same breath, he talks about Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Right? He says that chanting of Omkara and chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra are the same and they are non-different from Lord Sri Krishna. Krishna is non-different from the utterance of Omkara and non-different from Hare Krishna Mahamantra. In this age of Kali, especially, we need to chant the sound vibration of the Supreme Lord, which is the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And very beautifully, it is also given in Narada Pancharatra, Vyaktim hi Bhagavan eva Saksha Narayana Swayam. Ashta Akshara, right? Swarupena Mukeshu Parivartate. Anyone who chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the transcendental sound, Lord Narayana Swayam, Sakshat Narayan, comes and is present in Mukeshu. Right? Mukeshu Parivartate. He becomes manifest in the tongue of a devotee who chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So in this way, the Omkara is representative of the Supreme Lord. The Omkara is non-different from the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. The Omkara and the Hare Krishna Mahamantra are non-different from Lord Krishna himself. Whereas Tattvam Asi, which means representing that I am the Supreme, is an indirect representation or a misinterpretation given by Shankaracharya. That is what is given here by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is what we need to understand, the difference between Omkara and Tattvamasi. Omkara is a higher principle and Omkara means Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like that. Okay, last 1 or 2 paragraphs are left. Anyone else wants to read last 2 paragraphs? Okay, let me read. Although he Omkara, okay, Karpagavali Mataji wants to read. Okay, go ahead, Mataji. Okay, Harjeet Mataji can read. You already read, right, Karpagavali Mataji?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, we'll ask
continue?
Harjeet Mataji. No, Harjeet Mataji can read.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Danat Pranam. Yeah.
Although he, Omkara, has no material form, he is unlimitedly expanded and has unlimited form. By understanding Omkara, one can become free from duality of the material world and attain absolute knowledge. Therefore, Omkara is the most auspicious representation of the Supreme Lord. Such is the description given by the Mandukya Upanishad. One should not foolishly reinterpret an Upanishadic description and say that it is because the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot appear himself in this material world in his own form that he sends his sound representation, Omkara, instead. Due to his false interpretation, Omkara has come to be considered him something material, and consequently Omkara is misunderstood and elolized as being simply an exhibition or symbol of the Lord. Actually, Omkara is as good as any other incarnation of the Supreme Lord. The Lord has innumerable incarnations and Omkara is one of them, in the form of transcendental syllable. As Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita 9.17, among vibrations, I am syllable Om. This means that Omkara is non-different from Krishna. Impersonalists, however, give more importance to Omkara than to the personality of Godhead, Krishna. But the fact is that any representational incarnation of the Supreme Lord is non-different from him. Such an incarnation or representation is as good spiritually as the Supreme Lord. Omkara is therefore the ultimate representation of all the Vedas. Indeed, the Vedic mantras or hymns have transcendental value because they have prefixed by the syllable Om. The Vaishnavas interpret Omkara, a combination of the letter A, U, and M, as follows. The letter A indicates Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The letter U indicates Srimati Radharani, Krishna's eternal consort. And the letter M indicates the living entity, the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord, Chakra has not given such importance to the Omkara, but such importance is given in the Vedas, the Ramayana, Puranas, and the Mahabharatas from the beginning to an end. The glories of the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead are declared. Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Dandat Pranam. Right, we say Nama Om Vishnu Padhaya, Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Then before every Bhagavad Gita class, Bhagavatam class, we say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I pay my respectful obeisances unto Vasudeva, the son of Vasudeva. So we start, all of these mantras start with Om, right? A, U, Im, right? Where A refers to Krishna, U refers to Srimati Radharani, and Im refers to the living entity, being the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And why is it non-different from Hare Krishna Mahamantra? In Hare Krishna Mahamantra also, we are addressing Krishna and Radharani. O Supreme Lord Krishna, O energy of the Supreme Lord, Srimati Radharani, please engage me in your service. That is why Prabhupada very clearly says the Omkara is non-different from Hare Krishna Mahamantra, is non-different from Radha and Krishna in their spiritual form, in the spiritual world. So in this way, simply by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, with sincerity, with devotion, with enthusiasm, with determination, with patience, then all of these transcendental subject matters, you will get the right understanding. But simply if we try to mentally speculate the verses of the Sanskrit language and try to understand by giving our own interpretation, then more often than not, we will arrive at the wrong conclusions. Why? Because Atha Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahim indriyehi. We are unable to understand the transcendental purports of the Vedic subject matters by our material intelligence. Sevon mukehi jivadav swayameva suratyadaha. When we engage our tongue in chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, all of these transcendental purports will get automatically revealed in our heart by the mercy of Lord Shri Krishna. That's what Krishna says in 10.11. Teshamevanukampartam aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayami atmabhavasto jnana deepena bhashvataha. Krishna will reveal the transcendental knowledge by destroying the ignorance in our heart, which is the darkness in our heart, by illuminating the lamp of transcendental knowledge. So in this way, simply by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, all of our ignorance will be vanquished and transcendental knowledge will be revealed in the heart, and that is a process to attain Krishna Prema. So with that, we come to the conclusion of the 20th chapter of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. My sincere gratitude to all the devotees for joining us every day. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantagode Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Srila Gurudeva ki jai. Now we'll quickly do 2-3 minutes of Harinam Sankirtan. Okay. Nama. Okay, devotees can also switch on your cameras. I can see Madhavi Mataji joined us after a long time. Karpagoli Mataji, Rajneesh Prabhu, Harjit Mataji, Monimala Mataji, Vrishabhanu Kanya Mataji. Yeah, all our regular devotees have joined. Please do switch on your cameras, other devotees. Quickly, we'll do 2-3 minutes Harinam Sankirtan and then we'll end our session. Nama Om Vishnu Padhaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Ashatyadeshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Gaur Nitai Jaya, Jai Jagannath Jaya, Baladeva Jaya, Subhadrama Jaya, Sudarshana Jaya, Bala Gopal, Jai Radha Madhav, Jai Pancha Tattva Jaya, Prahlad Narsingha, Jai Krishna Balaram Jaya, Gaur Nitai Jaya, Radha Sham Sundar Radha, Rasa Bihari Radha, Rasa Bihari Radhe Radhe, Jaya Radhe Radhe Radhe, Radhe 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 Radhe, Radhe 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 Radhe, Shri Radhe Jaya Guru Parampara, Jai Shad Goswami Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Guru Deva Nitai, Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय, जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद श्रील गुरुदेव की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि बोल. Hare Krishna. So whom all do we have? Okay, Karpagavali Mataji, Madhvi Mataji, Rajneesh Prabhu, Harijit Mataji, Munimala Mataji, Vrishaman Kanya Mataji, Vanamali Prabhu, Nisha Mataji. All right, thank you very much. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, teachings of Lord Chaitanya ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. So tomorrow 12:30 p.m. we'll meet to continue with chapter number 21 of teachings of Lord Chaitanya. There are 32 chapters. After teachings of Lord Chaitanya, we'll move on to Krishna book. The next major festival is 7th of July. Now the Anavasara period is going on. So Ratha Yatra. So I hope all of you are part of the festival group. We are meditating on Sri Jagannath Ashtakam. And then after that, the next major festival would be Sri Krishna Janmashtami. So after this teachings of Lord Chaitanya, we'll start Krishna book. So that is a plan. So I seek the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas, seek the blessings of Guru and Gauranga. They're able to do this for the pleasure of Guru and Gauranga and all the Vaishnavas. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Srila Gurudev ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much. So we meet tomorrow morning, Brahma Muhurta time, 5 o'clock for chanting, and 12:30 p.m. chapter number 21 of teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Danat pranams. Okay, I can see a hand up. Yes, Karpavali Mataji, you want to ask something or you want to read?
Mataji, my humble request to you, kindly sing that Jagannath Ashtamam, Mataji. If you are singing the Sankirtana,
I have shared the link 3 times already in the group. Please
no,
check the message in the festival group.
No, Mataji, just like that we can sing, no, Mataji. Like that Sankirtana, one stanza we can sing, Mataji. Just no, everybody can.
You want me to sing now?
No, tomorrow also, okay, Mataji. What Sankirtana you're doing, Mataji. But like that you can sing, Mataji. My humble request.
Oh, okay, let's sing now. Okay. Karpagavali Mataji's desire will be fulfilled right now. Let's sing Jagannath Ashtakam.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you.
Shri Shri Jagannath Ashtakam ki jai. Shri Jagannath Ashtakam is written by Adi Shankaracharya. Actually, it is quite relevant. Right? Today only we were reading about how Shankaracharya had misinterpreted. But this is Adi Shankaracharya's conclusion. He sang Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate, Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, Punarapi Janani Jatare Shayanam, Ita Sansare Bahudustari Kripaya Pahi Murari. Right? Although Shankaracharya confused everybody, this is the final teaching of Shankaracharya, right? Wherein he said, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam Mudamate, right? All the previous philosophies that are taught are for fools. But if you're intelligent, you should understand the conclusion. What is the conclusion? Bhaja Govindam. Always sing the glories of Govinda. Right? And then Samprapte Sanhite Kali Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukrinya. In this material world, where we are suffering from the dualities of happiness and distress, we are suffering from pain, pleasure, right? What is that? What is that? Kripaya Pahi Pahi Murare. Oh Lord Murari, please protect me. I have no other shelter other than you. Then Punarapi Maranam, Punarapi Jananam. Again and again I'm being born and I'm dying in this material world. Right? Ita samsare bahudustare. It's very, very difficult in this material world. Kripaya Pahi Pahi Murare. Oh Lord, please protect me. So in this way, this is the actual conclusion of Shankaracharya. Right? And the same Adi Shankaracharya has written this. What is this? Jagannath Ashtakam. Right? Yeah. So let's sing this. Kadachit kalindi tata vipina sangita karavo mudhabhiri nari vadana kamala swada madhupaha Rama Shambhu Brahma Marapati Ganesharchita Pado Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me Bhuje Savye Venum Shirasi Shiki Picham Kaditate Dukulam Netrante Sahachara Kataksham Vidadate Sada Srimad Vrindavana Vasati Leela Parichayo Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me Mahambodhe stire kanakaruchire Neela Shikare Vasan Prasadanta Sahaja Balabhadrena Valina Subhadra Madhyastha Sakala Sura Seva Vasarado Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me Kripa Paravara Sajala Jalada Shreni Ruchiro Ramavani Rama Spuradamala Pankeruha Mukaha Surendra Shruti Gana Shikha Gita Charito Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me Ratharudo Gachan Pati Milita Bhudeva Patalai Stuti Pradurbhavam Pratipadamupakarnya Sadhayaha Daya Sindhurbandhu Sakala Jagatam Sindhu Satayam Daya Sindhurbandhu Sakala Jagatam Sindhu Sutaya Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me Para Brahma Pida Kuvalaya Dallo Fullanayano Nivasi Niladrau Nihita Charanu Anantaya Shirasi Rasanando Radha Sarasa Vapur Alingana Sukho Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me Navayache Rajyam Nacha Kanakamanikya Vibhavam Nayachaham Brahmyam Sakala Janakamyam Paravadhum Sada Kale Kale Pramatapati Nagita Charito Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu me. Hare Tvam Samsaram Drutataram Surapate. Hare Tvam Papanam Vitatima Param Yadavapate. Aho dine nathe nihita charanone shidamidam. Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Vavatu me. Jagannatashtakam punyam vyapatet preta shuchihi sarva papa vishuddhatma Vishnu lokam sagacchati. Shri Jagannatashtakam ki jai. I'm so sorry for my voice. My voice is not okay. But Mataji asked, so I just tried my best for the pleasure of Guru and Gauranga and all the assembled Vaishnavas, especially Karpavalli Mataji. So thank you very much. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Srila Gurudev ki jai. Okay, Rajneesh Prabhu, you want to ask something?
माता जी आपने 4 श्लोक दिए थे याद करने के लिए 9.34 10.8 और पिछले 2 वाले
10.8, 10.9, 10.10, 10.11, 10.12 to 13.
10.9 10.10 10.11
Yeah, 10. Yeah, Chatur Shloki is 10.8, 9, 10, 11. And then 10.12 to 13 is what Arjuna says. Param Brahma Parandhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adi Devam Ajam Vibhum Ahustvam Rishihah Sarva Dev Rishi Narada Sada Asito Devalo Vyasaha Swayam Cheva Bravishime. That was 10.12, 10.13. And then yeah, that was the last verse that we had given.
Right.
Till 10.13. So this week we will, on Wednesday, we will give this week's memorization slokas. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantraj Teachings of Lord Chaitanya ki jai. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrind ki jai. Itai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hari Bol. Thank you very much. Tanat Pranams. We meet you all at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning for Brahma Murta chanting. And then 12